Hey guys, it's Nosy Boy, and today I wanted to do something a little different. Usually my videos are extremely scripted, and that's because they're ideas that I want to present in a well thought out way. It's usually making an argument for something for the game, and I want to present that in the best way possible. But today I wanted to do something a little bit more relaxed, something where you guys can get a better idea of what I'm like as a person and the kind of things I enjoy. We've been making MultiVersus content since like June or July, and I haven't really done a great wish list. The wish list I made before, I'm pretty unhappy with. I've considered privating it. It just, while those are all characters that I like, it's just not very realistic. There's a lot of really out there picks, and I think it's fun to look at, so I'm going to leave it up. But for one of my first videos of 2023, I wanted to make a video going over the characters I would actually like to see that are somewhat realistic. Now, I do think MultiVersus can get guest characters, but I've limited myself to 4 instead of like half my roster being guest characters, and every single other character will be Warner Brothers or Warner Brothers adjacent. Also, there were a lot of characters I left off on my wish list because I kind of just assumed those characters would be in the game by the end of 2022. None of them are in the game yet, so I'm just going to be completely honest about the characters I want, and we're going to get started with Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now here's the thing, I know I can just play Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, but that didn't stop Aang from getting added to Brawlhalla, and I don't like how Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl plays. I think Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl is one of those games where you play it for a night with your boys, and then you don't touch it again. It's a fun drinking game, but that's all it's ever been for me. I don't even think I'm gonna make content on the new one, if I'm being honest. And Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite show, so yeah, absolutely just put Aang in every video game. He's in Smite, which is my most played multiplayer game of all time, and I still want Aang in this game too. Also, they can use Aang to advertise Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl too. Maybe there could be a skin that you get for free if whatever console you're playing on picks up save data from Nickelodeon All-Star. I think that'd be pretty cool. Following up Aang is a character that I've made a concept for that's not going to be uncommon on this list. I only make concepts for characters that I actually want in the game, and this character is Master Chief. Halo Combat Evolved is the first video game I've ever played. I've told this story before, but my mom was pretty anti-video games. I played Halo Combat Evolved. I had an amazing time. It was at my cousin's house. She had no idea. I came home. I was telling her about how I wanted to play more video games, and they went out and they got me a PlayStation 1. They shortly after realized Halo wasn't on the PlayStation 1, so they went back out and bought me Halo for the PC, which, one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. Goated parents. And that's what got me my gaming addiction in the first place. There is no Nosy Boy YouTube without Halo, and of course I would like Master Chief to make his platform fighter debut. Following up Master Chief is Optimus Prime. This is a character that I've considered making a concept for, but I'm honestly really intimidated to try and make a concept for a big body character. I love Optimus Prime. He's like one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. I think he is ridiculously cool. Transformers is just outright one of my favorite franchises. And again, he's not my #1 most wanted guest character because there are so many games where I can play as Optimus Prime. I mean, hell, he's even in Smite, which is my most played multiplayer game of all time. So I'm not exactly hurting for games where I can play as the guy, but I like him so much that I'm going to accept him in whatever game wants to hand him to me. And I think having a team of Optimus Prime and the Iron Giant would be really cool, or having Optimus Prime fight the Iron Giant. That just sounds like a dream come true to me. So yeah, absolutely, I would love to see him in MultiVersus. And finally, to close out our guest characters, it's another character I made a concept for, and it's actually my favorite concept I've ever made, Saitama. Now, Saitama gets a bad rep because I think a lot of people are unimaginative and they can't figure out how this character would work in a fighting game. And if you're one of those people, I just encourage you to go watch my concept. The director of MultiVersus, Tony Hyun, he replied to my concept saying that he liked it. I think it's my best one, and I really do think I've succeeded with explaining how such an overpowered character could work in MultiVersus. But why do I like Saitama as a character? Honestly, once I reached adulthood, One Punch Man just hit so much harder. Growing up in high school, I liked One Punch Man. I just thought it was flashy and cool. But then the whole point of the show is that something that Saitama was once passionate about, it's become work for him and it's become too easy and he no longer has that passion and he's just very tired and depressed. And that's something that I think a lot of adults can relate to. He's kind of like if Squidward Tentacles was a main character of an anime. I really love that, honestly. The whole show is like an allegory for how adulthood is just boring and not what you imagined it would be. And it's awesome. I really love the show, and he's one of my favorite characters ever. And speaking of one of my favorite characters ever, we're going to start out the actual Warner Brothers characters with the Joker. Now, the Joker is someone that I borderline didn't put on this list because I frankly expected him to be revealed already, but he hasn't been, and I have to talk about him. The Joker is probably my favorite Batman character. The only reason he's so low is because of how many games you can play as the Joker. He made his fighting game debut years ago, but he was also in Mortal Kombat vs. DC, Injustice 1, Injustice 2, Mortal Kombat 11. You aren't exactly hurting for games if you want to play as the Joker, even in a competitive fighting game. But he's still the GOAT. All three of my favorite Batman movies heavily involve the Joker. The Dark Knight obviously is my favorite interpretation of the character outside of the Arkham games. Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker obviously features Joker very heavily, and I think it is the best animated Batman movie still to this day. And then of course Batman Under the Red Hood also features Joker in a heavy way, and that's another movie that I just think is phenomenal and is the epitome of Batman, right? So while I'm not exactly hurting for the Joker because there are so many games where I can play as him, he's going to be an instant main when he does come out, and I'm very excited to see what he looks like in the MultiVersus art style. After the Joker is another character that I'm kind of frankly surprised isn't already in the game, and that's Daffy Duck. If we're talking about Looney Tunes, no Looney Tune holds a candle to Daffy Duck to me. The sociopathic liar is just my favorite character. He's an absolute asshole. He treats everybody like they're worse than him, and it always ends up in the funniest content of the Looney Tunes brand, especially the newer Looney Tunes shows where Daffy just dials that up to 1000. Absolutely one of my favorite characters. You know, he is inevitable and we are going to see him one day, and I'm really excited for the day where I can play as Daffy instead of Bugs Bunny. Now, following up Daffy Duck is the first character that I don't think is a gimme, and those are the Powerpuff Girls as one character. I associate the Powerpuff Girls very strongly with my sister. I was obsessed with Toy Story. She was obsessed with the Powerpuff Girls. It was always on the TV, and I would watch it when it was on the TV. And so I've been around these characters since I was literally an infant, and I really love them. The designs are so cute and iconic, and in a weird way, kind of cool too. I mean, Buttercup actually kicks ass. Superman trembles before the combined might of all three of these little superheroes. And honestly, I want more Cartoon Network reps that came out before like 2010. You know, all of the Cartoon Network in the game right now is Adventure Time and Steven Universe. I guess you could count Scooby-Doo and Bugs Bunny, but that still leaves like the late 90s, early 2000s with no representation. And the Powerpuff Girls are perfect for representing that era. Now, here's another character that's definitely controversial, and don't argue about this in the comments, don't make this video weird, but I'm just gonna be honest about how I feel about this. That's Harry Potter. Now, if they never put in Harry Potter to MultiVersus because J.K. Rowling is a weird piece of shit, that's valid. I don't need Harry Potter in the game, and honestly, it's not a big deal if he doesn't get added, but this is a franchise that I grew up with, and if there was a way to add Harry Potter with it profiting Player First Games, who are really nice people, instead of profiting that terrible woman, then yes, absolutely, I would love to see Harry Potter in MultiVersus. Again, I had Star Wars growing up, my sister had Harry Potter, so we would watch every single Harry Potter movie when the movie came out, and then after we watched the movie, my parents would take us to GameStop or Walmart and buy the game for that movie, and those were the only games my sister would want to play through with me. Again, I understand the controversial air around this character, and if you're not comfortable with them being in the game, I get that, and I'm not gonna force this character into the game. I don't even have the power to do that, and if more people want him out of the game than in the game because of it, I'm cool with it. And I'm sure there's a lot of Harry Potter fans in a very similar boat. This is a character that has a lot of fond memories attached to them, and obviously I would play the character if they were added to MultiVersus. Moving on to a much less controversial character, we've got Nightwing, and yep, I want him in the game. Nightwing is not available in enough games. I think the best way to handle this character is to have him switch between the Eskrima sticks and the staff, and then he can be Robin or Nightwing, just depending on whatever skin you pick. I think that's the best way to go about it, but Dick Grayson being in MultiVersus is really important to me. He's my favorite Batman character other than the Joker, by far. He's not in enough games. He's not in Injustice 2. The last time he was playable in a fighting game was 10 years ago in Injustice 1. It really is a bummer that we've gone this long without being able to play as him, and if MultiVersus is the game to make that happen, absolutely. However, I will add the caveat that if Injustice 3 does happen this year and Nightwing is in the game, he's no longer on my MultiVersus wish list. I kind of just want to play him in any game right now. I just would like the option to play as Dick Grayson. Now, following up Dick Grayson is Osmosis Jones. I wasn't memeing when I made the video about him, and it's a pretty good video. I think I do a good job at arguing why he should be in the game, but with Iron Giant and the Gremlins and these less popular characters getting in, it gives me hope that Osmosis Jones actually stands a chance, and I think he deserves a slot. There is no character that can do what he does. He is a white blood cell, so you could make him a support. He's also a shapeshifter and has a gun, and he has Drix, which he can deploy. There's just so much he can do, and honestly, he has a really cool design. This is a movie that I watched a lot growing up as a kid, and I even watched the Ozzy and Drix show. Again, I just really want this character, and I hope he can make it into the game one day. Now, these next two characters, as is tradition, whenever I talk about them, I'm going to talk about together. That is Scorpion and Sub-Zero. I didn't put Scorpion or Sub-Zero on my last wish list because I expected them to be added to the game. The Mortal Kombat 30th anniversary was coming up, and I really did expect to see them. We didn't see them, obviously. They're not in the game, and we need Mortal Kombat representation in MultiVersus. It is the biggest video game IP by far that Warner Brothers has access to. There is a new NetherRealm release on the horizon that adding these characters can hype up. It's the perfect time to add them, and it really is frustrating not seeing them in the game yet. And if we get one, we should get the other. If we can get Steven Universe and Garnet, Rick and Morty, Finn and Jake, then we can get Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Let me and my friends play this duo, and I can name like 3 of my friends that would play MultiVersus if these characters were in, and one of them, these are the only characters they could add that would get them to play the game. So that's it. I just really want to see Mortal Kombat in the game. It's one of my favorite fighting game franchises, one of my favorite video games, in general. And as soon as either of these characters comes out, I'm going to main them, and I'm going to main them both most likely. Following up Mortal Kombat is Lord of the Rings, and I want to go on a quick tangent. The character is Aragorn, but a lot of people seem to think Lord of the Rings is done from MultiVersus, and I don't think this makes any sense at all. It's all because the data miners said that Morty's UFO borrows from the code that Gandalf's bird used, and they also kind of scrubbed Lord of the Rings from the files, but you don't lose the rights to a character after you already get the license, and you're not going to start working on a character that heavily until you have the license. They have the license for Lord of the Rings. That's why we've seen Gandalf art in the very first leak of the game. That's why Gandalf's moveset was in the files, but we do know that it took Player First Games 3 or 4 attempts to get a moveset they liked for the Iron Giant, and I think what's happening with Gandalf is the same thing. They probably just weren't happy with the moveset for him, and so they borrowed from those moves for other characters, shifted stuff around, and we'll get Gandalf when they figure out how they want him to play. But Gandalf isn't even my favorite Lord of the Rings character, it's Aragorn. And he's not just a dude with a sword either. He has a sword, he has a bow, he can swing around the torch like he does in one of the movies. He literally has an army of the dead that he can command. That's a very easy special move or gimmick for the character. He's the one true king of Gondor. He deserves to be in the game. He's basically the main character of the movies, the two main characters being Frodo and Aragorn, and I think Aragorn has a lot more that he can pull from for a moveset than Frodo. I want to see him in the game. He's my favorite Lord of the Rings character, and it'll make me really happy if he can get in. Now, we only have 2 characters left, and this next character I'm going to mention, a lot of you probably expected to be number 1, but it is Jon Snow. Jon Snow not being in the game already is kind of a bummer. He's the main character of Game of Thrones. He's the only character from Game of Thrones that's getting a spin-off, or at least if they give another character a spin-off, he's the first character that's going to get one. Jon Snow is not just a sword character, just like Aragorn. Not only has he come back from the dead, and that is something that you can pull from for a moveset, but he also has a wolf companion, and I've seen from data miners that the Hound has been mentioned by other characters, but come on, you can't seriously tell me the Hound has more to pull from for a moveset than Jon freaking Snow. He's my favorite character from Game of Thrones that actually has a chance to get into the game. The other characters I like from that show are like side characters that definitely don't have a shot in hell, and he looks cool. That's the ultimate reason why Jon Snow should be in the game. He looks dope. And don't you guys want a sword character who can command a giant albino direwolf? Doesn't that just sound cool? And finally, we're gonna get to my number 1 pick. And this wasn't my number 1 pick for a while because, like the Joker, he's in other fighting games. And I can play as this character in other fighting games, but I've realized that no fighting game has included this character in the way I want, and of course, I'm talking about Aquaman. Aquaman is my favorite superhero of all time. The Aquaman New 52 books are so good, and I instantly fell in love with the character. I started playing him in Injustice. He's my most played Injustice character between all the games, but in Injustice, they don't really go for the comic book look. Like the full orange and green suit that he wears with the scales. They don't go full ham into that. They come close in Injustice 1, but Injustice 1 isn't exactly a pretty game. In Injustice 2, they completely go the opposite direction. He's shirtless in most of his costumes, which is cool in its own right, but I wanted the classic look. And they never give him the long hair and beard either. This image that you're seeing on the character select screen is how I want him to look in the game. Give him the classic suit, but also give him the long hair and beard, and I'll be a happy camper. The reason why Jon Snow was originally higher than him when I was making this list is just the simple fact that Jon Snow isn't playable in any fighting game that exists. Well, Aquaman is, but then I realized I just want Aquaman more. He's my favorite superhero, one of my favorite comic book characters, one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, and once he's added in MultiVersus, I'll be content and he will be my most played character. With all of that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to make your own wish list with this template, follow me on Twitter. I'm going to put my @ on screen right now and also link it in the description. But once this video is live, I will have released the blank version of this template so you can make your own wish list. I'm really excited to see them. Go ahead and reply to me with your wish lists or @ me with your wish list. I'd love to see who you guys want for the game. Let me know what you think of the characters I picked. This has been Nosy Boy. Thank you for watching, and I'll smell you guys later.